Hi, my name is Ryan Booz. I'm a Postgres community member, the author of softwareandbooze.com. Just someone who's had the really fortunate opportunity over the last number of years to connect with many in the Postgres community, travel and speak at a number of conferences. Just because I love this community, I love teaching, and one of those things that I really love is having access to something that allows me to do some of this demonstration and teaching. And so over the last couple of years, I've been working on this demo database that tries to be a little bit more realistic, or at least have some realism to it, and is able to continuously produce new data so that queries don't feel stale. And so for various reasons, I work at PG Analyze, which is an awesome Postgres monitoring and observation tool for query tuning and Postgres tuning. And as we've been adding more and more features, I've been working towards testing some of that and providing a database that's a little bit more understandable as a good demo database. And so I thought, you know what, this is time to dive in and finish this thing up. And one of the ways I wanted to finish this up, one of the dreams for a number of years has been to get this thing running and provide it as an easy to install, really quick way to spin up a test database. And so there's a lot to this. I owe at least another blog post and probably a couple of videos on exactly what's in Bluebox, how to use some of it, the hopes and dreams I have for this thing to come. But I finally released this last Friday, I think it was. I'm trying to think what day it is. I think it was last Friday. I published this blog post. I put the GitHub repo up, talks about exactly what it is. And it was all working. That's great. It was working as much as it could be, right? So I had these commits as I got this repo going, and again, a small change to the README was the last thing that I had put there, and so that was my last commit. And this worked. I could download the Docker, the repository, type start.sh, and it would spin up a Docker container. It would load all the data. It would start generating new data, and I could connect to it. Awesome. As part of this, though, one of the things I wanted to do was create a couple of users so that, again, you could use this more like an application, right? So we have the admin user, the app user, I should say. This would be like, my web applications connecting to the database. It doesn't have all of the privileges, right? I don't want the web application maybe creating tables or modifying objects. What I want is an admin user or a DDL user in some way, a role that owns those objects. And so I created these roles. So I'm doing some testing. I was actually working on a video for PG Analyze about PG stat statements, which we'll publish in just a little bit. Whenever you see this video, this is February 18th of 2026. So if it's later than that, that video hopefully is posted or soon will be posted. But I was doing some of these sample queries to talk about PG stat statements and how user IDs are tracked alongside statements. Again, not everyone always understands this. And so I can run the exact same query in multiple versions of a database on the same server, the same database with different names, same schema and so forth. And I'll get multiple entries in PG stat statements because we track them per user per database. So I thought, great, I'm going to demonstrate this easily. I'm going to connect as the Postgres user, run a query, and then I'm going to connect as the application user and run the query. Because I'm a guy that has been talking about privileges for a long time. I give this talk, I've probably given this talk 10 or 15 times at this point in the US and in Europe about privileges. I think privileges are awesome, and I think they're really hard in Postgres. It doesn't mean they're bad. It's just hard to get right if you don't think about it. And so this just happens to be a topic I just really get excited about. If you can't tell, it's almost midnight here. I'm working on some sourdough bread late at night, and I'm waiting for it to rise. And so I thought, I have a few minutes. I'm going to record this video. And so I really care about this. I've been talking about this for a long time. It doesn't mean I'm an expert. It's something that interests me. But I thought this is pretty simple. I've been talking about how to set this up for years. No problem. When I release this Docker image, it's going to do the right thing. I'm going to have the right kind of roles to demonstrate what I want to demonstrate. So that was all good. So I go to log into my database here using dbeaver, and I went to run that select query, select star from Bluebox Film as the application role, and I got a permission denied error. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, how in the world could I get a permission denied error? I've been doing this for years. And so it was the afternoon yesterday, I think. And now I need to look at the commit log. But I think it was, shoot, I didn't mean to go there. I could look in anyway. Yeah. So it was yesterday. So yesterday afternoon, I was like, oh, this is super easy. Before I went to bed, let me just fix this. I was recording video. So I thought, I know exactly what I did wrong. So I have this create. So, and then this is in Docker. So that was the piece that my brain just wasn't thinking about when I did this. So when Docker, a Postgres Docker container starts up, it will look inside of, so the what we call the entry point, the Docker entry point script, will look inside of this init folder over here, and it will look to see if there are any SQL scripts or SQL gzip compress scripts. And if there are, it just runs them in alphabetical order. But it runs them as the Postgres user. And if you know anything about Postgres, you know that if you don't name a database in Postgres, when I say connect to this server, whether it's with pSQL or anything else, if I don't name the database, the default behavior is to try and connect to a database with the same name as the role that you're connecting as. That's why the Postgres role works all the time, because there's always a Postgres database. And so as the Postgres user, when I log in, it just works because there's a database there for me. So my brain wasn't thinking, and these scripts get run as the Postgres user. And so by default, it connects to the Postgres database. So if I quickly follow these scripts through, the very first thing it does is it creates some roles. And I haven't switched databases here. There's no /c, which is the pSQL command for connection. So these are being run on the Postgres database. So I even said it right there, right? Run as Postgres user in the Postgres database. And when I say in, right, create role is not something you do in database. This is done at the server level. So I create a group role called Bluebox admin. And it's a group role. If you go find that video, maybe I'll try and link to it. Or a number of articles I've written on roles and privileges in Postgres. There's nothing that actually means this is a group role. Just by convention, the community for years has said, look, if a role can't log in, no login, then we're going to pretend that's a group. Okay, we're going to treat it like a group. And a role that can log in, like this BB admin role, is a user. And so we go ahead and set that up. Now, a whole bunch of issues here about whether we do password on this line and so forth because of logging. Different discussion. So what I have here is I have 4 roles I'm creating. The Bluebox _admin, that's a group role. The Bluebox _app, another group role. And then I have 2 user roles, BB _admin and BB _app. Good names, bad names, whatever. I hate naming things. Everyone hates naming things. And then, so that's at the server level. Great. All those roles have been created. And the reason I want to create those group roles is because I can grant membership into those roles from my user roles. So my user roles can now become a member of that group role. And so whenever I apply a new privilege to the group, like insert, update, delete, create, whatever, then any other roles that are members of that group can do that same thing. So you'll see that, for instance, BB admin got granted permission into the Bluebox admin role. So now, eventually I'm still in the Postgres database until this moment. And now I've granted membership, I've granted usage, I've done all what I need. And now this connection switches. It creates a new connection over to the Bluebox database as the Postgres user. So this says /c Bluebox database as the Postgres user. Great. What I had done previously is this said connect to that database as BB admin, not as Bluebox _admin. And so what ended up happening is this connection was then BB admin _admin, And again, pretend this wasn't here. Sorry, I should have set this up before recording the video. Everything else in this down here runs as bbadmin. And it works because bbadmin is a member of Bluebox admin, and it just works for this portion of it. Okay, so this script gets done. And then script number 2, again, what I want to do is have all of those objects owned by a central user because, oops, forgot, I'm setting default privileges. And what default privileges do, excuse me, what default privileges do is allow us to say when I create an object as my role, apply these privileges by default. And what that means is, as I, for instance, create tables, I don't also have to say, oh, and by the way, grant such and such to this role, grant this and that to the other role, grant that. I don't have to do that for every object. I can set it once, then every time I create an object as a role, it will get those privileges. It's a consistent way to apply privileges. Man, it is dry in here and I keep coughing. I'm sorry. So I set all of that up in the Bluebox database. And so now it's primed and ready for me to go ahead and create objects. And so what I had done originally is, again, not thinking, is I did that. However, I didn't create privileges as bbadmin. I created default privileges as Bluebox_admin, the group role. And what happened is then the rest of the script runs as bb_admin, which, because they are a member of the other group, gave it permission to create the objects, but bbadmin still owns the objects. And because I didn't create the default privileges as bbadmin, I created them as Bluebox_admin, the group. I'm thinking I probably need to change the names of these, but let's move on to another discussion. It created the objects, but the default privileges didn't get created. And so therefore, when I went ahead and I went over dbeaver and I said, hey, select from Bluebox Film as the application role, bb_app, I got a permission denied error. So when I realized that last night, again, this is February 18th of 2026. So it was last night for me when this happened. I was recording some videos and I thought, oh, that's simple. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just update this. I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to connect as the Bluebox admin role. And then that whole session will just be set as Bluebox admin and we're good to go. I just wasn't thinking. It just made sense. And I have some helper scripts that inject some stuff, so I had to update those. That's what this pull request was, or that's what this commit was. It's not that much. I deleted 7 lines and added 9, right? Like there's not a whole lot that happened here. It was late. I was recording a video, and so I pushed that because my brain was like, yeah, this is easy. We'll just make that happen. And so what happened then is I woke up and LinkedIn had picked up my blog post. I had posted it. People were starting to try this and use it. And it was working up until late last night. And so I wake up and I see, an error. Hey, thank you so much, whoever this is. I tried to run this and I get this permission denied error. And I immediately knew what I had done. I was like, I can't believe I did that. Me, the guy who has talked for literally 3 years about privileges and permissions, and I just think they're fun to figure out in Postgres. So I knew immediately what I had done. And so this morning I woke up, saw this, and I went ahead and made another commit. And the fix is honestly pretty straightforward. But I want to show it because it ends up being exactly what you need to do in your scripts too if you're trying to manage this correctly. Now, again, if you have the opportunity, go find this. It's on my YouTube channel, @RyanBooz. I'll try and post a link to it. If you watch this talk, and it has been updated a few different times over the last couple of years, but the basics are all still the same. Primarily, the big issue here is that if you're not careful and you have a database that has objects are owned by different roles, in Postgres, the owner of an object is like the super user of that object. And so if you let various admin roles create things, functions and tables and whatever. And they get fired or they're not there, and you don't have membership in a common role, then unless you have super user access, you can't modify that object. And it's only super user. So like in a hosted environment like Amazon, where you don't get a super user in RDS, if the role that created the object, that role you can't log in as right now, and multiple, you're not part of a group role, then you can't modify the object. You can't modify the index. You can't add a column. You can't, delete a column, whatever. You can't modify the object because you don't own it. And the whole point then is we want to go ahead and create all of our object as one role, preferably a group role. Again, group is semantics. And that way, anybody who's a member of that group role can now go modify that object. And if you create everything as that group role, you can create default privileges so that now as you create objects like tables and functions and what have you, you can make sure that the correct privileges are already applied. That's what I was trying to do. And so in my quick assumption here, when I went ahead and just said, oh, let me just update this to the previous commit, let's just make it bluebox_admin. The error was that role's not allowed to log in, which is exactly true. It's not what I wanted. What you should be doing is connecting as some user. Now, in this situation, again, this is being run on Docker. Docker's going to run this as Postgres anyway. I can't control that. And so this statement simply instructs Postgres in Docker to connect to the other database, and right now as the same user, Postgres. But because Postgres is a super user, what I can do then is set my role during this session to another role. And so now this works. So I connect as Postgres, or I could connect as any other role that has access and as a member of this admin role. And then before I do anything, before I create tables, before I create schemas, whatever I need to do, I say set my role to that group role because I'm a member of it. I'm allowed to do that. And now for the length of this session, unless I change it, things will execute as that role, which means when I create tables, it's now owned by that role, and the default privilege for that role is now able to select for it, right? Is the default privileges are applied, and now in my case, the application role that I was trying to use now has access. And so all of that, just simply trying to give another demo and another video, made me commit something that was broken, which I was able to fix this morning, and actually is a better example of what you should be doing in your scripts when you are trying to get to a place where you're managing all of your objects more deliberately. And that is, even if you use something like Flyway or another migration, a migration toolkit in some way, you're probably not connecting as a role that has access to do everything. This is kind of like Linux, where you only go to root unless you need it. And so in this case, you would connect as a role that does have the ability to switch to the other role, but it's a deliberate process. And so I would generally, in a normal situation, I would not connect as Postgres. Again, this is Docker, so it honestly doesn't matter what I do there. I just wanted to be consistent. So I connect as maybe a role that is like an admin role, but it's an actual user role that's not allowed to create objects. So the connection is set up, and then I deliberately say, hey, before I create objects, set my role to that owner group role, create all the objects, the default privileges get applied, and then I can go back to whomever I was. Now, you also notice in this script, I do have to set back to Postgres at one point, and I could say set role none, set role Postgres. And I have to do that because of extensions. A number of extensions can only be installed by a super user. And this is actually a dump file, and this is the order things come out in the dump file. So then I manually went in and set these various things so that it works in my Docker container. So I didn't expect that to be a 20-minute explanation. It's now after midnight. I got to go deal with my bread and go get some sleep. But I just thought this was a good example of a couple things. Number one, I'm really excited about Bluebox as a offering and as a tool. I hope you have the chance to use it. There's more coming to it. Like I said, I need to create videos just describing what it is, why I created it, how to use some of it. There's some new features that would be coming over the next few weeks. Whereas you run this, if you get new versions, Flyway, I'll be using Flyway to apply any schema migrations automatically, so you don't have to keep losing your data or dumping and restoring. You can just get new Docker versions, and it will apply the migration scripts and so forth. There's going to be some stuff coming in the Bluebox schema repo, which is the repo with the actual schema itself. Some of the data in here is real movie data that I get from an open source database. And so the scripts that get the new movies over time, I have not yet included here. I'm going to be working to include those. So if you want to take this and you want to keep your movie database up to date, you can do that. So there's a lot coming. So I'm excited about it, just as something for the community to have and hopefully make better. But I just thought the whole privilege thing was, for me, a little bit funny because I just love this stuff. And I thought, no issues at all. I know how to do this. And it was easy to mess up. Part of it was because it was happening in Docker, and I just wasn't thinking about the connections in Docker. But it still was just, overconfidence. I thought, easy fix, I'll make that happen. And then I quickly got an issue. So, all right. I hope that's helpful. And this is just kind of me, extemporaneously. Is that how you say it? Just want to review this for my own benefit and hope that helps someone else. So we'll talk soon. Thanks so much, and appreciate everyone in the community. Cheers.